Good morning. Welcome to this morning service on this brisky. Is it winter yet? It's hard, but it is certainly feeling like winter. Uh, it's good to have you all here today for this service. Um, Before I forget, or should I forget, and I don't want to leave you with not enough information, but next week, uh, December the 6th, will be our Bodhi Day service. Bodhi Day service will start at 10 o'clock, and our guest speaker is Dr. Scott Mitchell from the Institute of Buddhist Studies. So please plan to come and join us for that. Okay, we're fortunate to have with us our guest speaker this morning, Michael Jones. But before we get to Michael, we'll begin this service with Sambujo, followed by sutra chanting, Junirai, Junirai. So if you please join us in the reading of Junirai. Namanda, Namanda, Namandas, Namanda, 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 namanda. If you would please now join in the reading of the Golden Chain. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. Good morning. And thank you, Michael, for joining us this morning. Michael is one of three minister assistants here at the Bitsing. I'm sure many of you already know him. He is involved with teaching our twice a month Dharma school study classes on the second and fourth Tuesdays every month. And it's an interesting class. Anyone is welcome to join us for that class. But this morning, Michael is our guest speaker. And thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Sensei. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, namanda, namanda. Well, thank you, Rinbon, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you all had a safe and pleasant Thanksgiving. I realize it's probably not what you wanted it to be in terms of getting together with all your family and so on, but we do appreciate you being here and being with us. So I wanted to talk really to the young people today a little about self-respect. You know, recently we watched Disney's Frozen 2 again, and I really enjoy most Disney productions, and this is no exception. But watching this movie again, following the story, maybe a little bit more intently, and listening more closely to the words of the songs, I was struck by the message of one song in particular. You know, when you think about Disney movies over the years, there's a fairly common theme. There's generally a young person, almost always a little girl or a young woman, who finds themselves in some type of difficult situation. They want something more, or they want to change who they are or how they feel about themselves. What's your favorite movie? What character do you think most about? Who'd you dress up as for Halloween? Was it one of the Disney characters? Now for the boys, the choices from the Disney movies are not as plentiful. Your choices for favorites or for Halloween costumes may be from Avengers or Descendants or others. For Disney movies that featured boys or young men in the primary role, you have to go back to movies like Jungle Book, Peter Pan, or The Sword and the Stone. And many of you may not even be familiar with some of these. Maybe you look to Star Wars and Luke Skywalker. I know, that old man. So I guess Star Wars now has become a role model for the girls with Rey. But what I want to talk about today applies just as much to the boys as it does to the girls. I will ask the boys to bear with me as I use examples of girls and young women. However, the basic message is for everyone, including the adults. The world's a scary place sometimes. Look at what's going on right now. The COVID pandemic has us staying at home, not able to participate in the things that are most fun, not being able to see our friends or sometimes even our family. The news is filled with people arguing, pushing each other, marching in protest about one thing or another. We hear the word hate far more than we hear the word love these days. Meanwhile, you're just trying to keep up with school, feeling a little lonely maybe, and missing your friends, family, and activities that you really enjoy. On the other hand, some of you may actually feel a little more secure, a little happier. You don't have to be around those people who push you around, talk mean to you, or bother you and your friends at school, in your activities, or anywhere. You may have heard the story of Shakyamuni Buddha before, how the young Gautama, so comfortable in his parents' palace with his young wife and newborn son, abandoned all of that to go out and find out how the world really worked. He knew nothing but happiness and luxury. There was nothing, and there was not anything that he wanted for or that he needed that he couldn't have. Why leave all that? He had a sense that life, a real and full life, was not just about having things. So he set off to find out what life really had to offer. He tried many things and even almost starved himself to death. But he came to realize that without his own strength, he would not be able to find true happiness. As he focused his thought, he eventually came to understand how everyone is interconnected, how we all rely on others. He understood that everything changes and nothing will last forever. And he understood that to be of help to others, he first needed to help himself. After he became a Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, he taught for over 40 years before he died. Just before he died, he told his followers not to worry that he would be gone. He told them to rely on themselves, trust themselves, to be capable of understanding and doing the right thing. Do you think that this may have been a bit scary for Buddha's followers? Many of them had been his student for most of their lives. Now the person who had taught them so much was leaving them forever. And before I started speaking today, we read the Golden Chain. There's a very important line in that offering that I want you to think about and really understand. In fact, it's in the opening phrase. I am a link in Amita's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. That line, I will keep my link bright and strong, is very important. Just as the Buddha told his followers to depend on themselves in the golden chain, we are saying that we will keep ourselves healthy, safe, and strong. We will keep learning and we will help ourselves. As you are growing up, you'll need help from your parents and grandparents, your brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, teachers, and your friends. Guess what? Even us adults need help from time to time. Remember what I was just talking about a little earlier when I was telling you about Buddha's followers? Most of them were adults. Most of them were probably worried. Sometimes the adults, we even look to you, our children, our grandchildren, to help us. That's because we know we can count on you to help us, just as we want you to know that we are here to help you. You are a very important part in all of this. Sometimes, even when you're still very young, you will be the strongest, the smartest, and the best able to help. But you have to start by knowing that you are able to do that. You have to know that you can do this, or at least give it your best try. At the beginning, I said there was one song that really caught my attention in Frozen 2. Some of you might think it would be the most popular song from the movie Into the Unknown. Good song, but not the one that seems so important to me. The song I like is Show Yourself. In this song, Elsa finally realizes that she is the person that she's been looking for, that the strength that she's been seeking, the hero that she's been searching for is herself. As she talks to the memory of her mother says, show yourself, step into the power, grow yourself into something new. You are the one you've been waiting for all of your life. So whether you're looking for the person that has the strength to help you understand your abilities, or you're looking out at the sea from your island, wondering how far I'll go, or you dream of living a different life, looking up to someone, wanting to be part of your world, or you're just wondering if your parents believe that you will bring honor to us all, it all starts with you. You have to show yourself. Of course, we're all here to help. Your parents, your family, your teachers, Rinban Sakamoto, Reverend Mikami, we are here for you. But you need to be here for you too. And you matter. You are worth the effort. Have confidence in you. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Wonderful message. I just watched Frozen 2, I think last week for the first time. And I'll have to go back now and watch it again. But last night I was watching Discovery, Star Trek Discovery. It's a CBS streamed series. But here too, it's that sense of discovering the self and the importance of that identity that we have and the connections that we share with all the people around us and how important each individual is to that relationship. Um, yeah, sometimes we need something out there to remind us, but all we need to do really is look around and we can see in the lives that surround us how valuable our lives are and the lives that surround us. Again, thank you very much, Michael. Hopefully, we'll hear you again. I'm sure we'll hear you again at another time. But thank you. Thank you very much. As we conclude this morning's service, I want to thank all of you for joining us. Please remember that next week is Bodhi Day. It is a service that remembers the enlightenment of Shakyamuni Buddha. Uh, and please join us. Dr. Scott Mitchell from the Institute of Buddhist Studies will be our guest speaker, and it does start at 10 o'clock. So please remember to join us for that. Thank you very much. If you please join in Gassho as we conclude. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. See ya. Thanks, Michael.
So on the Filipino, so it doesn't match with the funeral service. So yeah, right. It's the best. Yeah. No, which way to go? So it's difficult to match. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to this morning service. Thank you for joining us on this day. We have as our guest speaker Dennis Akizuki, who has been a long time part of the temple, and we look forward to his Dharma message today. And so that if I should forget, I want to remind everybody that next week, Sunday, December the 6th, is our Bodhi Day service. is the service that we remember, commemorate the Day of Enlightenment of Shakyamuni Buddha. The service will start at 10 o'clock, and our guest speaker for that morning will be Dr. Scott Mitchell of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. So please remember, next week will be our Bodhi Day service, and the service will begin at 10 o'clock. Okay, let's continue with this morning's service. If you would please join us in the reading of Sambujo and Juseige, followed by Juseige. So please join us. Again, good morning, and thank you for joining us for this morning's service. And we're fortunate to have with us as our guest speaker, Dennis Akizuki. He is one of our three minister assistants here at the Bitsui, along with Michael Jones and Sumi Tanabe. Dennis helps, well, when we were able to do in-person services, they were learning how to prepare the Onaijin for services, learning a little bit about chanting. We had hoped to get more into those kinds of practices when the pandemic started. But they continue to study. Both Dennis and Michael are in the Jodo Shinshu correspondence course. They're in actually their second year of that course. Mikami Sensei this year started on that course. So it's been busy in that sense, keeping up with studies and doing things that have to be done, of course, remotely, but still requires our attention and our energy. Dennis has been a president of the Bitsui. He has also served as the chair of our Ombon. And there's a whole bunch of lists of things that he has been responsible for. And we'll keep adding to that list of responsibilities as we continue to enjoy his participation and leadership at the Bitsui. So this morning, we're fortunate to have as our guest speaker, Dennis Akizuki. Thank you, Dennis.
Good morning. Thank you, Rimban, for that introduction. Please join me in Gasho. The Shin Buddhist ideally lives a life of constant gratitude. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. I'll get to the source of that quotation, but you're going to have to watch for a while. So here we are, more than 8 months into the coronavirus pandemic here in California. Earlier this fall, things were getting better. A number of cases were down, hospitalizations were down, positivity rate was down, deaths were down. But now the disease is on the rise again in what they're calling the third wave, with a record number of new cases, a spike in the number of people in the hospitals, and the number of people who are dying from the disease. In Santa Clara County, just yesterday, a new revised health order was issued, requiring visitors from more than 150 miles away to quarantine for 14 days when they arrive in the county. There are stricter limits on the number of people who can go into stores and other businesses, and on the number of people who can gather in for outdoor events. All high school, college, and professional sports are temporarily on hold. Now, all of this can add to the fear, frustration, anxiety, confusion, impatience, and anger that people have felt and that have been part of our lives since early this year. We haven't been able to do the things we normally do, especially this time of year, gather with family and friends, attend parties, just enjoy the holiday season. I mean, just 3 days ago, there's Thanksgiving, and it was a Thanksgiving that probably like no other that any of us have ever experienced. But people adjusted. I saw on social media that people, instead of gathering together, they prepared dishes separately, and they combined them, and they got it delivered to different family members at home. So in that way, people can enjoy the holiday meal, but not obviously with the large gathering that we normally do. And that was great to see. It's very inspiring in a way. And I saw on social media, Michael Jones's family did that. Sakuma family did that. A lot of other families did that. Vaccines are on the way, but it's going to be some time before they're widely distributed. So we're going to have to keep on coping with the pandemic. Even before the new surge, there was talk about pandemic fatigue. Each of us are coping in our own way with this pandemic fatigue. But we can also look to experts into our own Buddhist teachings for help in surviving the pandemic and dealing with that kind of pandemic fatigue. An article I found online from UC Health, a nonprofit health system in Colorado, gave 5 tips for trying to deal with pandemic fatigue. It quotes a psychologist named Justin Ross, who said, "Fatigue comes from juggling multiple demands all at once and operating from a seemingly endless place of appraising threats to our health and figuring out steps to keep ourselves safe." Here are their 5 tips for dealing with pandemic fatigue. Be active. Now, being active has a huge effect on mental health. Try exercising, walk, run. If you need some help, maybe get a friend to regularly go out with you. Of course, wearing a mask and staying socially distanced while you hike or walk or run. I've actually started to I've been walking, but then I've started to run a little bit, just a little bit, and running very slowly. But it gives me a chance to reflect on things such as what I'm going to say in Dharma talks like this one. And I made changes to this morning's Dharma talk when I was out walking and running this morning. Second, restore and replenish your energy. Take breaks during the day. Walk, take a bath, read a book. The psychologist Ross says, quote, "Binging on Netflix can seem relaxing. It can also be avoidance behavior that isn't restorative at all." That was kind of interesting to read, actually. Monitor your social media. Stop doom scrolling and limit your time on screens. Now, I hadn't heard of doom scrolling before. That's doom, D-O-O-M, scrolling. Quote, doom scrolling or purposely tuning into negative stories on TV or on social media fuels increased dread, uncertainty, anxiety, and fatigue, Ross said. So he recommends limiting your time on social media. Breathe and meditate. Breathing exercises are the simplest way to reduce stress and anxiety. Slowing your breathing can tell your body that there is no immediate threat. Now, there's also meditation. And of course, meditation is a big part of many Buddhist sects, but Shin Buddhism doesn't emphasize that. In an article by Caitlin Yoshiko Kendall of the Religion News Service, Reverend John Turner of the Orange County Buddhist Temple makes that very point. He recommends doing something else, something we just a few minutes ago, chanting. Reverend Turner said, "If you're upset or anxious about COVID, sitting quietly might not be the best thing to do. When you chant, you're forcing your mind to focus on something else so that there's nothing else in your head other than the chanting." Another thing is there are mindfulness apps out there. In fact, they're booming now. According to that same story, English language mental wellness apps such as Calm, Headspace, and Insight are booming. There were 12 million downloads of those kind of apps in April, up 2 million downloads over January. And the number one tip, according to UC Health, is reflect and accept. They say, if you feel irritated, impatient, angry, or suffering from fatigue, anxiety, or depression, accept that all of these responses are normal, and understanding such at a difficult time. For Shin Buddhists, reflect and accept gets to kind of one of the core teachings, seeing things as they are. we may be sick and tired of the pandemic, but the pandemic doesn't really care. There are other tips, of course, how to deal with the pandemic fatigue. Those 5 ones from UC Health seem to be good ones. If you want other tips on how to cope with the pandemic, I found something from the Buddhist Temple of Southern Alberta, which is in Canada, of course, which has a series of short videos on 10 ways to cope with the pandemic. You can search for the temple's Facebook page and look for the video section. The Buddhist Churches of America has a YouTube channel, which also has a number of Dharma talks about the coronavirus for ministers such as Reverend Turner, San Jose's own Dr. Reverend Kenji Akahoshi of the San Jose Buddhist Temple, and Reverend Harry Bridge of the Oakland Buddhist Temple. 4 things we talk about a lot in Shin Buddhism are wisdom, compassion, impermanence, and gratitude. Those 4 things can help us continue to cope with the pandemic and stay healthy mentally and physically. We should strive for the wisdom to see things as they are. As I said earlier, the situation is going to change because we have pandemic fatigue. The pandemic's still there. We should show our compassion by doing what we can to protect others, by continuing to wear masks, stay 6 feet away from one another, and washing our hands for at least 20 seconds. We should realize as challenging and depressing as the situation right now may be, that it's temporary. Things are going to change. So we just kind of have to accept things for what they are now and accept when that change comes. I found an interesting Dharma talk online that gives a Shin Buddhist perspective on life that we can also apply to living in the age of the coronavirus. It's a 2007 Dharma talk given by a well-known Shin Buddhist minister, Reverend Tetsuo Uno. And Reverend Uno gave this Dharma talk on the glass half empty or half full. Reverend Uno said, first, a pessimist looks at the cup and sees, as you've guessed, it as being half empty. Second, an optimist sees that same cup as being half full. Third, a Buddhist sees it as simply being a half cup of water. In short, he or she sees it as it is, without any kind of further comment or judgment. Fourth, a Shin Buddhist, from a perspective of faith, views that half cup of water as a gift and a source of gratitude. For in his or her humility, which is an integral part of faith, he or she is fully aware that all things, from the food that we eat, to the clothes we wear, to the water we drink, are not produced from within, but are given to us as gifts from a source outside of ourselves. So the pessimist tends to create a gray and unhappy world. The optimist, a bright world, but he or she may run into trouble when that cup becomes empty and bone dry. The Buddhist will no doubt lead an enlightened life that may, however, lack a certain human warmth. The Shin Buddhist ideally lives a life of constant gratitude. So that's where that quotation at the beginning comes from Reverend Uno's talk. So going off what the Reverend Uno said, we should be grateful for what we have: food, shelter, good health, and for the myriad of other people who support our lives and keep us healthy and keep us fed: cooks, truckers, farmers, people who hand you your takeout order, people who deliver your takeout order. The list goes on and on. We can see things the way they are, but what we do after we see what things for what they are is in some ways even more important. We should be there for each other. You can easily get overwhelmed by, as what the psychologist Ross described as, juggling those multiple demands and constantly evaluating dangers and threats. It can cause us to withdraw and to try to insulate ourselves when we should be trying to reach out to people, reach out to our family and friends. Let's try to do more of this. Let's try to contact someone you haven't heard from in a while. See how they're doing. More importantly, if you know that there's somebody who needs to be checked on or is experiencing difficulties, call them. Get them on Zoom or Google Hangouts or FaceTime. If you think you need help in talking to that person, Rinban Sakamoto and Reverend Mikama would be glad to help reach out to those people. So let's use the Dharma to help ourselves so we can also help others. Thank you for listening and watching. Please join me in Gassho. The Shin Buddhist ideally lives a life of constant gratitude. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you, Dennis, for that wonderful Dharma message. We always have that kind of idea in mind of half full or half empty. And there are alternative ways of understanding that or looking at that. And to broaden that, to see things simply as they are, to be able to appreciate that, I think is something that Jodo Shinshu certainly reminds us of. Our interactions with our friends and family can also remind us of that. The gratitude that for the things that make our lives possible. And Jodo Shinshu, the Nembutsu is referred to as Kansha no Nembutsu, or the Nembutsu of gratitude. We're grateful for the many things that we are able to receive and that support us and make our lives possible. And finally, we are grateful for the assurance of Amida Buddha that provides for the enlightenment of all beings. This past weekend was Thanksgiving Day, Kansha no Hi, the day of Thanksgiving. But to be grateful is something that requires us to look more carefully and more openly at the world around us, perhaps differently at the world around us. Thank you for your message this morning. Next week, we have our Bodhi Day service. It'll be at 10 o'clock. And our speaker for the morning will be Dr. Scott Mitchell of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. Dennis, as I mentioned earlier, is taking classes from the Jodo Shinshu Center, the Jodo Shinshu Correspondence Course. It's different from the Institute of Buddhist Studies, but still part of that. There are instructors that come from, I think, many parts of the world, primarily here, but many parts of the world that help with the students that are going through this course of study. Both Dennis and Michael have been students in that for the past year, have continued into their second year of studies. But in any case, Dr. Mitchell will join us for our Bodhi Day service next week. And again, that will start at 10 o'clock. Thank you, Dennis, again, for your Dharma message. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this morning's service. As we conclude, will you please join in Gassho and Nembutsu? Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you.